how did the Houston real estate market perform during the month of April? And what does that tell us? And what expectations should we set about the market performance in May and in June? Hey everybody, this is Arion, real estate broker with Signature Real Estate. And the data just came out from the Houston Association of Realtors. And I just wanted to walk you through the data and look sort of behind the curtain and give you an idea about what that means and especially what that means going forward. So I'm going to share my screen with you and then we can dive right in. All right. So as I mentioned, the Houston Association of Realtors just released the data for April. And I just want to give you the most salient points, a quick summary of what happened. So in short, we saw a slide in real estate sales during the month of April, while prices remained flat. So more specifically, if we look at all property sales, which includes townhouses and condos and single families and multifamilies and so forth, those sales were down 21% compared to April of last year. And single family sales were down 19% compared to the same period of time. At the same time, average sales prices were flat. Basically, they were unchanged from last year. And median sales prices were up by 2%, which just means that the midpoint, meaning more expensive properties sold than last year. So the question that you might be thinking about is, well, why did sales drop? What happened? Well, the thing to understand is that sales are lagging indicators of performance, which means that they only tell us what has already happened, right? So it's kind of like looking backwards and the movie has already ended and the sales are only telling you what happened in the movie. But they don't tell you about the causes and they don't tell you about, sort of the roots of the problem. So the leading indicators, the ones that tell you what's going to happen in the future are showings and pending sales. So the reason why sales were down in April was because the showings and the pending sales were down during the month of March. See, real estate has a lead time of 30 to 60 days, from the time that you put something under contract till the time it actually closes and becomes a sale. So when you see weakness in the market sales during the month of April, really that's the weakness that is represented by the decline in showings and the decline in pendings during March. So it's just the natural consequence of having lower showings and lower pendings. So here's a very interesting graph that is provided by a showing service or the leading showing service in Texas called Showing Time. And what you'll see here is that the orange graph are showings during the year 2020, and the blue is the graph for the corresponding time during 2019. And what you'll see here is that there's a sharp drop in showings right around March 13th, and that's exactly when stay-at-home, shelter-in-place rules went into effect, where buyers stopped going to look at properties, realtors start staying home a lot more, even though we were essential. If the buyers are not going out to see property, then you're not going to be there showing it at the same time. So what you'll see here is that, during the second half of March and all the way through April, you will see that showings were down, more than 40% compared to the year prior. And that weakness is now reflected into the showings, or into the sales, I should say, for April. And that's why we saw the decline that we did. So if you were to look at the March statistics, you will see that pending sales were actually down 2% compared to the year before. So the weakness in the pending sales was starting to show because the showing started slowing down in the middle of the month. So that weakness in pendings and in showings now is reflected in the data that came out. But more important than what happened, which we can't do anything about, is, well, what will happen in May? What will happen in June? Like what's ahead for us? And when we look at April statistics, there are two pieces of information that are key to try to figure out what will happen to both sales and prices in the future. And that is pending sales, which, as you will see here, they're down 17% or 18% compared to April of 2019. So this is where that weakness in showings is now being reflected in full force, because the lack of activity, the lack of showings was more predominant in April. Like April was the peak of the stay-at-home order, and there was much less activity that was happening. So you will see that pending sales going into May are down 17%, and that inventory is still pretty low at 3.6 months of inventory. So it's even lower than it was in 2019. So what does that mean? So, this is not, I'm not I don't have a crystal ball to tell you exactly what's going to happen, but what those leading indicators are pointing to is that, at least for May, we should have sales will most likely slide again, but we will also begin to see the recovery happening, right? Because the lower pending sales in April, they point to weaker sales in May, right? If you don't have a lot of listings that have gone under contract in April, those will not result in closings in May. So you will see some further weakness there. And then the reason why I think the recovery is going to start to begin again is that we are seeing a complete recovery, a complete pickup in showings after the reopening of Texas. So right now we're at the level where, if you want to see the graph again, right, we're at the level when currently, as of May 8th, showings have completely caught up with the level of activity in 2019. So because of that, we're going to start seeing a pickup in the second half of May and the first half of June. So it might not be early enough, like that strength in showings will probably not be reflected in the May numbers, but it will certainly be reflected in the June numbers. In addition to that, low inventory and lower interest rates are likely to keep prices at or even make them go higher than 2019 levels. And the reason for that is when you have low inventory in the marketplace, that essentially means the supply is low. And when you have low interest rates while showings are picking up, that means the demand is strong. So when you have low supply and strong demand, then there is no downward pressure on prices. So most likely prices will either be flat again, like they were in April, but most likely in May and June, we will see sort of an acceleration of the real estate market just based on these leading indicators and the data as we have it now. Obviously, things could change with regards to the pandemic. Things could change with regards to, difficulties in the oil market, layoffs, so on and so forth. But based on what the data is telling us now, we should see a slide in sales in May, but the recovery will begin and we will start to see some stronger numbers in June. Again, this is Arion with Signature Real Estate. This was the April real estate market report for the Houston area. I hope this was helpful for you. Thanks for watching.